Great. Okay, so I think with that, yeah, we got a sense that folks do have experience, right, in doing UndocuAlly trainings, whether that's hosting or participating in them, and that they could really move a lot of things in our campus, in our communities, in our schools in general. And so I think before we get started with some of the presentation parts of today, we do also want to hear from you all, like what makes a successful UndocuAlly training? And that's whether you've attended one or you've hosted or contributed to one. We want to know like what made it a like successful one for you, right? And you can let us know about that by going to menti.com and entering the code that's on the screen. Nancy also put it in the chat, or if you want to use the QR code, you can also do that. And we'll get to see kind of what folks really find moving and effective in their UndocuAlly training. So I'll just wait for some of that to come on. Oops, that's not it. Refresh. I'll give folks a couple of minutes to write that in. Okay, I see a couple of folks voted. It looks like leaving with tangible next steps, right? Or building towards institutional support is very helpful, is what makes a successful training for them. Creating an environment that challenges folks and supports them as they try to create access and resources. Connecting with campus partners, trainings that are engaging. Getting knowledge on how to support undocumented students, hearing student voices. We'll wait for a couple more people. Yeah, student panels, learning practical ways to be an ally, knowledge building. Let's see. Actionable next steps, supportive environment with clear next steps, hard, creating an understanding and respect, being an advocate and providing necessary resources. So I see a lot of things right around building knowledge, having action steps to take beyond the training, increasing institutional support, right? Like moving people towards that, connecting with campus partners, or even hearing about student voices. I'll wait for a couple more. Right, some next steps. Yeah, as folks are maybe putting a couple more of these in, I'm wondering if I can get a couple of volunteers to maybe share a successful UndocuAlly for them, UndocuAlly training for them. And you can go ahead and unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you want. Yeah, not everybody go all at once. I know we all had really great words to say about UndocuAlly training. So I know that folks have either gone to one or hosted their own. So what are some of the things that made it successful for you, and expanding some of your answers that you put on the screen?
I can share a little bit. I haven't hosted one or helped host one yet, but I know that when I've been in the UndocuAlly task force and we talk about intentionally having a training, we spend a lot of time on really selecting a date and a time frame where we'll yield the most participation from our campus. So, I mean, even in the smallest details of like intentionally picking when, where, modality that you'll host it, I think can go a long way for all that hard work to actually reach people in a training.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Karina. Just making sure that like people put a lot of effort, right, in planning these and doing the outreach, but how can you also make sure that it's a great time for people to participate, and that the way you're giving it, whether like virtual, in person, or hybrid, or however in between those, right, is actually effective for the people who are participating in. Thank you for bringing that up. Maybe one more person to share what makes a successful UndocuAlly training for them. You can expand on what you put. Oh, I
I
heard.
can share.
Yeah,
Or there was another voice.
I think it was you. Yeah, let's.
Okay. Just wanted to give space. I think having like a culturally competent content, a lot of times when I go to UndocuAlly trainings, they're very catered to like one specific population, usually like Latinx students, which is great, but undocumented students are very diverse, so we need to be mindful of other groups. And then also be more like trauma informed, especially after a pandemic. I think that's usually a missed concept in the trainings. And then how accessible is this material? Because a lot of times staff have a hard time finding where this information lives. So it's not very accessible. Like it could be great, but if staff and other educators can access it, then it becomes problematic. And then lastly, continue support and follow up. We have these trainings and then what? Like we talk about next steps, but then what? Like we just stop there. So I think there needs to be a commitment to continue support and follow up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christian, for naming all those things, right? The culturally competent component of it, right? Just the trauma-informed approach to it too. I think even before the pandemic, there's always been a lot of like stigma, right? And just challenges that undocumented folks are facing that affects how they're reaching out for support or how they show up on our campuses. And that also affects how people should be showing up with their support also. And so I think that's really a good component to include and highlight. And even just the next steps, I think that's something that is brought up a lot in this Mentimeter as we see and actual next steps, not just like you came to this training and you get the sticker at the end, or like you came to this training and you're good, right? I think that's a really good thing to also bring up. And I know our panelists, I think, are going to be speaking a little bit about those next steps, hopefully, when they speak later. So yeah, so thank you all for participating in this. If there's other things you kind of want to share or you resonate with what you're seeing in the Mentimeter or with what people mentioned, feel free to also throw that in the chat so we can also kind of hear folks' opinions as they're going. And I am going to go to our next slide. Oh, it's right here. Okay, so yeah, so I think as we kind of hear from people, right, there are many different like smaller reasons as to why we do UndocuAlly trainings, but I think in general, it's really to like build and expand awareness and knowledge of undocumented students, issues, experiences, resources, and needs in our community, and really create an inclusive and welcoming environment, and give people tools and strategies to actually support them, not only on an individual basis, but like support undocumented students institutionally, right? So we're shifting kind of like the practices of the school, of the department, of the community to be able to provide that support on a bigger institutional level. And I think most of our UndocuAlly trainings probably have like similar components, right? I think as we were kind of like preparing and checking in with the folks earlier in today's meeting, we were just talking about how there's a lot of similar components to UndocuAlly trainings, and a lot of it came from the work of Dr. Elena Macias, who I think Nancy lovingly calls like the godmother of AB 540 trainings or UndocuAlly trainings. And I know we at Immigrants Rising built a lot of our model or like components of our training, right, around her work. And I do also just kind of want to share some of the components that we have that really serve the goals that I named in the previous slide. And so I think we always start with just creating a common understanding to ensure that folks are coming in with this or are gaining kind of the same base knowledge around undocumented students, right? And just understanding what actually being undocumented means, where folks are coming from, right? Maybe bringing in some of that cultural competency things, to make sure that folks are aware of the who undocumented students are, the experiences they're bringing into our campus. We also try to address the current political climate and what different challenges are going on outside in the world, that affects how students show up on our campus and how they show up and ask for support or don't ask for support, and how that kind of affects how our campus institutions and community show up for these students too, right? I know that a lot of folks also attend UndocuAlly trainings just to get a little bit of updates around California and federal legislation. California and federal legislation to see how to best support.
Those are for new people signing up. Those.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we do also do the equipping part, right? And providing strategies, tools on actually how to support undocumented students and any resources that support them in our campuses and community as well, right? As you know, from Immigrants Rising, we have a ton of resources. And so a lot of our UndocuAlly training is sharing a lot of these materials around how to access and navigate higher education as an undocumented students, but also to give some of those institutional practices for educators on how to better show up for students on an individual basis, or how to transform their departments with practices that make the support a little bit more institutional and beyond just having one person. And then we do also, as folks mentioned, want to give people some time to actionize the information they gave. And so at Immigrants Rising, I know we like to do things like scenarios to have people like kind of put that knowledge into action, and try out some of the things that they gained from the presentation. And then we also always make sure to kind of elevate student voices during these trainings, to give spotlight to that. Both to kind of like empower students to advocate for themselves, but like move folks too, right? And create community for these students in these trainings as well. And so I'm going to also take a pause there and see, like, I know people have, had various experiences with UndocuAlly trainings. Is this resonating with people? Kind of what's something you do similarly? What's something you kind of do differently from what's included here? And I think something I'll add is this is kind of like a base UndocuAlly trainings. UndocuAlly trainings can also be done in a way so that it's like department specific, right? That you go to a specific department and give them specific actions based on the work that they do on the campus or the institution. But yeah, I'll take a pause to see if there's any resonance or people want to add how this shows up for them at their campus. Nancy, I don't know if you want to add something to this part.
Sure, I can break the ice. I think that, I like the elements that you've been talking about, the words that people were talking about in terms of empowerment, standardizing, right? Making accountability. I think that when we started doing UndocuAlly trainings at San Francisco State, it was probably like over 10 years ago, thinking about, we really just wanted to get common information out so that everybody sort of had a basic understanding, but thinking also about how can we make sure that, as you said, that we are providing actionable items for individuals to go away from that meeting and actually be able to have an idea about next steps to take. Also making sure that people are aware of that resources throughout the campus so that they don't have to feel like they have to leave and be experts, but that they have a base enough knowledge to be able to refer information or not provide inaccurate information. I also think something that's also really important is making sure that we are shifting the narrative. I always try to, when I can, include Yosimar's UndocuJoy video within UndocuAlly trainings, because often it can sort of be sort of like this doom and gloom or challenges, but make sure that we are elevating the ways in which students and undocumented immigrants within this country have found ways to thrive, or just also the diversity of their experiences. And really thinking about, I think Madeline, I like your idea also, we definitely made sure that we were working with different departments instead of just waiting to see who is going to come to us, actually going out to different departments, to admissions, to financial aid, to the bursars, so that they could have a clearer understanding and we could personalize some of that information to them.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, thank you for kicking us off and just adding a couple of those things too. I see Cynthia also has her hand raised.
Yes, I pulled up my PowerPoint to look at some of the stuff that we include as terminology, because people will use undocumented or dreamer and so forth. We also, somebody had mentioned earlier, diversity. So we have some information about the second largest group being Asian here in California. And then data, which overall in the US, and then bringing it down to California, and then what we feel that we have here at San Diego State University, and then going into the cost of attendance for students. And then we go through other stuff as well, but those were some principal things that we also include in ours.
Great, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, I think data is a good way to move certain stakeholders, right? So I think that's also a really good component to also highlight from UndocuAlly Trainings. Aldo? Oh, did I lose you?
Sorry. When we work with our partner colleges, something that we kind of push for an awareness of is we're trying to move away from the resilient student only model, because the dangers of that is saying, well, if a student's not resilient, then they don't deserve to be successful in college or pass, right? So we do try to shift that responsibility from the undocumented student and say, you as a department, you're the ones that are being paid, right? You're the ones who are the state employees, right? So we do shift that responsibility a bit more into like those areas. And yeah, like it was said, right, we are, the presentations we do give are culturally informed, so that way we say not everybody can have the privilege of being resilient, right? Because again, that varies throughout, it's not just students but also throughout cultures. So we kind of give them that understanding.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aldo, for naming that too, right? I think UndocuAlly Trainings also have the power to kind of shift narratives. I think for the longest time, I've been seeing Ally Trainings. This is somebody who's also a current DACA recipient, that were very like trauma focused or like challenge focused, deficit focused of what these students or this community doesn't have. And then it also became like, we're resilient, which is a good message. I'm not saying it's a bad message, but it also, I think, takes, as Aldo mentioned, like also puts some responsibility on the student to figure stuff out on their own, which is exhausting and unfair for people who are not able to do that. And so how can we also kind of shift narratives and put responsibility on our institutions and our educators who are who's supposed to be providing the support to all students in our community. And so I think with that, it's also really good, right, in UndocuAlly Trainings to highlight really that like not all undocumented students have access to the same support. I think this is still a common thing that we're seeing from folks, and how can the people getting these ally trainings learn a little bit more about the community, but also come out with like an open mind to figure this out for people. I think it's from their students. I think it's not always about asking students necessarily for their status, but how can you equip yourself to like being knowledgeable enough to be able to give support and resources to these students generally without having to actually like ask them for their status, right? Like making sure that you're able to give to incorporate like undocumented student resources in your everyday work, and even highlighting your support so that people can come to you if that is something that they're looking for. I think with UndocuAlly Trainings, it's really the first step to like building this institutional support for undocumented students in our community, or for the undocumented folks in our community. We really hope that by doing these trainings, it's like the first step from like having a foundational, like individual level of support to like building that up so that it becomes a group of people supporting undocumented folks. And then it becomes this whole institutional, like comprehensive support, so that it's multiple people, the whole institution, who's able to do this work. And it's not just dependent on one individual, one center, or a couple of people to do it. And so I think with that, oh, I'm sorry, before we transition into our promising practices panel, we also, we also want to make sure that after this training that like support is visible, and that the general message that people are taking from them, right, is that even if students are undocumented, that they're really not alone and that we're in this together. And that this school and colleagues also have other people to lean on to do this work too, right? Like you don't have to be the only expert doing it, but how can we, as folks doing this work, as folks in education, are also in this together to provide the support and lean on each other, to support undocumented students. And so I think with that, I do want to transition us to our panel actually, and hear from our speakers. They introduced themselves a little bit earlier today already, but I do want to have Brayan Astorga from MiraCosta College, the Student Services Specialist for UPRISE. We're going to spotlight them, I think, or pin them on the Zoom. And then we also have Dr. Norma Salcedo from Cal State Long Beach, who's the director of their Dream Success Center. And so I'm going to kick us off with kind of our first question. I'm going to stop showing my screen actually. And I want to turn it over first maybe to Brayan to just kind of describe the goals of their campus UndocuAlly trainings and what do you do at your campus to meet them?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Brayan or Brayan. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I work with MiraCosta College and I coordinate all of our undocumented student services there. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share with you all a little bit about our agenda and what does the UndocuAlly training at MiraCosta College looks like. And so, like Madeline mentioned, a lot of the work that we do is very much inspired by Doctora Elena Macias and the AB 540 Ally handbook that they created a while ago. And we have just expanded throughout the years to include other goals and other objectives for this training. And so we do start with letting our participants know how we are investing our time and how are we using this time to invest in ourselves, invest in our students, and invest into how can we best support our students. We start with our project of goals and objectives. We then added a component with our legal services. So the Jewish Family Services Higher Education Legal Services team supports the San Diego community colleges. And so we have incorporated them as part of our training with the immigration experiential section. We've also added a mental health realities. And so we work very closely with our health services team here at MiraCosta to talk about mental health and the realities that are impacting our students. We talked about social context and the 4 immigration policies in the United States. We then talk about policies in general and how they are affecting our undocumented students. And then we do have a student panel. After our student panel, we go through a situational role play. We talk about effective mentoring, how to become an ally, or what does that mean? And then we do have an ally decal and contract. And so some of our goals with this agenda that we have is really creating this safer campus for our undocumented students. And through that, we are encouraging our faculty and staff to really stay up to date on these policies and so that they can be knowledgeable about some of the concerns and needs that undocumented students face. And then also, we just want to let them know about what are some effective strategies and what are some resources out there for our students, which is why we really added this immigration services, mental health. And so some of the things that have been changing with our training, like I mentioned, some of the stuff that we've added, but we've also added, we're slowly incorporating entrepreneurship into our training so that our faculty and staff knows how to best support our students in terms of generating some sort of income. And like I said, we've added the immigration services, we've added mental health, and now we're in the process of creating our second training. And what is the second training? What does the step 2 look like? And so that's one of the things that are changing and that we are creating. And then also, we are trying to see what does the second training look like for specific populations. And so that kind of looks like our training and some of the goals that we have for our UndocuAlly training.
Thank you, Brayan, for sharing that too. And I think you are able to kind of share us the slide of that also for folks who want to check that out later. But I'll turn it over to Norma, the same question too, right? To describe the goals of your campus UndocuAlly training and what do you do to meet them?
Hi, everyone. So here at Cal State Long Beach, we're always thinking of innovative ways to put out the UndocuAlly training. I've done the UndocuAlly trainings in like 3 different CSUs, and it ranged from like 4 hours to a full day to 2 days to 2 hours. And it just, no matter the time length of the UndocuAlly training, people always left overwhelmed because it was just so much information that they were like, this is just, it's never enough time. Like we could have an UndocuAlly training going on for a whole week and it still won't be enough time. So when I moved down to Cal State Long Beach, I'm like, okay, I want to try something new because it was in the middle of the pandemic. So we got funding to hire students as research fellows. So we started doing research on best practices, and we really couldn't find anything out of what we already know. So I was like, you know what? Let's try something new and let's do an online module course for that will be a part 1 that our participants can do at their own time. So they have 2 weeks to complete a number of modules pertaining on different topics. And then when we meet, it's actually, they've already done the terminology, they've done, and it includes quizzes because, you know, you got to test people, make sure they do the module. So it includes like quizzes and they're fun and engaging. And then when we meet, we can truly focus on the action planning, like, and putting into practice what they've learned. Because what I don't want these spaces to be is like, this is a check mark. I get to add it on my signature. I get to put my placard on my office, and I did my job. And it's, being an ally is a continuous part of being an educator. Like you don't just go to a training and then that's it. So we really wanted to focus on the action planning when we meet with them in person. So fast forward, we did that for about 2 years, got an award for it and did great things with it, got a lot of really great feedback. We meet regularly with other CSUs, and we identified that there's a huge disparity right now in the CSU system, where we have CSUs who have directors like we do here at Cal State Long Beach. We have 2 full-time, we have 24 student leaders, like we're just booming. And then you have universities that I won't name, but that have no one, like they don't even have a point person that we can call because they're like putting it on like EOP or another office. And it's really saddening because there's undocumented students in all 23 campuses. So one of the things that Dr. Ana Aguayo sort of, what she did is she put a bunch of us together who have done UndocuAlly trainings for many years. And some, Cynthia, I know you're here, and other people, I don't know if others are here who were part of that support, that work group, but we came together and created a CSU-wide UndocuAlly training that kind of replicated what we do here at Cal State Long Beach with the modules, minus the CSU-B specific. So it's a basic 101 CSU-wide training. And I don't know if this is the time for me to share my screen, Madeline, but I can share it later. But is it? Can I share the screen? Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'll share my screen so I can show you. But we created an online training that all staff and faculty are able to take straight out of the CSU training module that they have access to. So it could be out of their own time, and they get a certificate at the end of the training. And I'll share with you sorry, I have, if you're all like me, I have like 30 windows open right now. So this is the training, is pretty 101. It talks about what is an ally, key definitions, diversity among the undocumented community, and it's interactive too. We had a great IT team who did this great graphics, how to build your own allyship skills, our legal services. Brayan, I know you incorporated that as well. Our campus legal resources for allies and immigrants rising is here. And then what does it mean to pledge to be an ally? And then other acknowledgements of like who was part of the team. So what I am doing this year differently. So before they would sign up, we will assign them to the class, and then they would do the modules online, and then we will meet in person. Now the CSU wide training is a prerequisite for them to do our training. So I'm going to share with you our website. So this is our website. You can go on it and see all the resources that we have. And on here, we're requiring all our participants to do this training as a prerequisite. So they can still sign up for our in-person training, but they'll have to let us know where you're at. Like either, oh, I'm going to do it by the time we meet, or I've done it, here's a copy of my certificate. To kind of hold them accountable that they're doing it. And then and I have the training here for them as well. And then once we have our registration open for our UndocuAlly training, they'll have it here. So yeah, so we're trying to create an UndocuAlly training that's very focused on actionable items. This is every year we have the largest number of students who don't have a work permit, that don't have a social security number. We can't just go to these trainings and leave with nothing. Like they need to come in and tell me how they're going to make sure that my students are going to have paid opportunities, whether on campus or off campus. Like I need them to understand that there is an urgency in the support for this community. Because I feel like we've become desensitized, right? Because for the past 6 years, it's been the same. It's like up and down legislation, decisions, right? And it's sort of like even with the decision yesterday, it was like sort of like a ghost town. Like I remember every time there was a decision, like my emails were being bombarded, like, how can I help? And now it's sort of like, I think people are used to this. And my students are noticing that, and they're like, hey, like we're here. And it's important that people are leaving with actionable items that are going to continue to support the success of all of our students, regardless of the immigration status that they have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Norma, for just naming that too, right? And showing off that great module. I know our campuses, institutions are all at different places, and we can't all start off with the module, right? But I think that kind of gives folks an idea of where to build towards to. I know that the California Community Colleges also have a pretty similar module in their Vision Resource Center, actually, if folks here did not know about that, but check that out also. But I think, yeah, your point and also kind of helping like build urgency and just like the continuous need, right, can really help accomplish the goal of like just pushing for more institutional support in your campus or even in your system in general. And so I think that's something that maybe I want to turn back to Brayan, actually. How, like, I know that you incorporate a lot of the different components we talked about, right? And even just the specific services, the great work that MiraCosta is doing. How do you kind of see that like building into working towards institutional support on your campus or in your community in MiraCosta?
Yeah, thank you. So I think one of the great ways that this training is very effective is that we do have different partners from across the campus that are engaging into this training. And so like I mentioned in the chat, this is an all-day training. It's not do it at your own pace, just because from what we've heard from our campus, that it's better for them to sit down and like do the training and really engage with people. And so what we brought in is that we have like our director of admissions, who is doing a section on AB 540 and really talking about what is residency for tuition purposes looks like. We have our financial aid coordinator coming in and doing our California Dream Act section. And so we're having partners from all across the campus that are coming into our training and really engaging with our students. And that's really what's creating this institutional support. And so we are creating partnerships with across the campus so they can engage with our training, but then also so that they can encourage their departments and our faculty and staff to engage across the campus, so that we won't have all of the work fall into our UPRISE program, but that it is being across campus, and that across campus people know about the resources and services that we have.
Hey, thank you, Ryan, for naming that too, right? I think most oftentimes the responsibility of doing these trainings do fall on the center, if there is a center, or on the person who is the dedicated position on their campus. And so I also just want to highlight that, right? Like this work is not possible to be done by one person. I think Norma's example of like working across the CSU is also an example of that. How can we bring in partners to not only show institutional support actually on our campus and our system, but even create that campus buy-in, right? So that this is not just a one-time thing. This is not just like a one-time or like a individual kind of support that exists, but it's something that our campus or our system is committed in doing. And so I think there's been kind of talk of, right, some of the challenges that might come up in actually even doing these trainings. And so I want to turn that back to Norma actually on maybe naming some of the challenges that they've seen over the years or over their time around hosting these trainings, and how do you address them, or how does your campus work in addressing them?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge has been people complaining about the length of the training. No matter what time I've done it, they're like, oh, we can only do 90 minutes. So we could only do 60 minutes. And I'm like, well, that's not a training. At that point, I'm doing a presentation. So I think that's been like the biggest challenge. So what we've tried to do is really encourage people to do the UndocuAlly training. Like if they tell me like, hey, like, can you come to our department meeting? I say, yeah, great. I'll come and I'll do like an introduction, but at the end of the day, I still need you to do this training because it's not enough. So I mean, our numbers have been pretty consistent. We train about 100, 150 just on the training, but we do a wide range of presentations. For instance, we're noticing that faculty are not, we get more staff than faculty. So we have a faculty center here that does regular trainings. So every semester we do an UndocuAlly training just for faculty in collaboration with the faculty center. If we look, so I'm in a different place. Like I work at a university at SF, like when I was at SF State, I was the only staff member, and it took years for them to even give me one student assistant. Like I had no student support at all. And I was very thankful that I had an amazing task force that had already done the UndocuAlly trainings before I even got there. So I was able to come in and support them by at least taking the lead in the UndocuAlly trainings, but with their support, because I could not do it by myself. So I had to, like Brayan, I had to type in to my colleagues and my I called my docu homies, that I was like, hey, come out and help me out. And they always came through. Nancy was one of them that always came through whenever I needed them. Here I have the privilege of hiring students because I want my students to become me one day. I want my students to be the next coordinator or the next director at any center across California. And if they want to do that, I need to put them in spaces where they're the ones talking about their own experiences. So we're very fortunate. We have a research fellows team that we've been able to build throughout the last 3 years. We started with 2, now we have 6 from undergrad to graduate. And their sole responsibility, well, one of them is to help me run the UndocuAlly training. So they present with me or my coordinator, which I'm hiring. Pitch, if you're looking for a job, apply. We're hiring a coordinator, and they work with us to present. And then one of the things that we're also are doing is how do we elevate our UndocuAlly training to not only include institution data and what the scholarly research is sharing, it's like, what are our students sharing? So we actually work with a faculty member. Her and I were our co-principal investigators, and we did a formalized study, a mixed method study, where we got to ask students about their experience at Cal State Long Beach. So now when we're telling them, hey, this is what the students are saying, like now we have approved data, institutional data that we can say, hey, this is the voices of our students, and this is what they're saying that they need from the university. So what we're doing separately from the UndocuAlly training now is that we're doing a roadshow. So we're doing the UndocuAlly training, but our administrators are not coming to the UndocuAlly training because they got a lot going on. So what we're doing is we're utilizing that data that we gathered, and we're doing a roadshow, and we're presenting at every leadership team of AVPs, VPs, deans, associate deans. And we're going to all these different spaces and saying, hey, this is the data that is coming out from our study. This is our experience running a center that needs more support. This is what we need from you. And a lot of action items are coming out of those meetings, as well as UndocuAlly training. But I feel like I need to get in front of the people that are making the decision, because the people that are going to UndocuAlly training are you and me, right? Like, we want to burn this thing down, but we can't do it, right? Because we need institutional support. We need administrators to be on board. So the UndocuAlly training help us create sort of a support system among our peers, right? Among other managers, other coordinators, other staff members, and then our mini roadshow meetings and presentations are getting us in the administrative support that we need to, so that the people that are going to UndocuAlly trainings can actually do what they want. Because we'll have UndocuAlly trainings and people will be like, Norma, I want this, but I don't have the title to be able to do this. And I said, don't worry, I'll talk to your supervisor and I'll make sure they get on board. So that we sort of strategize, because an UndocuAlly training is not enough. Like, you have to do advocacy in different ways. And again, I'm talking at a place of privilege that I can have the time to do this, because I've been a person of one in a center, in a space, and it's unfair that there are some institutions that are putting all of this work on just one person, and sometimes not even full-time, one person part-time, which is even more. That's a whole different conversation that we can have at a different roundtable. But yeah, just a little bit.
No, thank you so much, Norma, for naming that too, right? I think that also kind of, it speaks to just like working with partners, kind of working with what you have, right? If you are a campus that is more resourced, how can you like take advantage of that? If you're not if you're on the opposite end of that, right? How do you bring campus buy-in to like build towards having more of that resource? But I think it's also thinking about how can this UndocuAlly training complement other ways to move towards institutional support if possible in your institution. I think I really like your point of like decision makers are not often coming to these meetings. So how can we also reach them? Data works really well for them, right? If we have the capacity to be doing some of these advocacy, that's great to do that too. But the UndocuAlly trainings are a way to like build those campus buy-in in different places beyond just the person who is doing the undocumented student work. And so I think I'm going to turn it back to Brayan to also maybe speak about just any challenges that you all are seeing in hosting these two from the other side, right? From a place that's not maybe has so much capacity as Cal State Long Beach. And how are you kind of like, how did you address some of those challenges?
Thank you. So I think one of the main challenges that we see is because it is an in-person training, we do max the amount of people that can come do a training per time. And so due to it being max, we do, there's a high demand on doing our UndocuAlly trainings on this campus. And so there's always people on our wait list. There's always people that are trying to take this training, but because we do have a max for it, there's like need to do more and more and more. And so we're really thinking, how can we reach as many people as we can, but also with the capacities that we have. And so I think that's one of the main trainings, but one of the main challenges. Another one's how can we continue to add all of these different resources and realities and impacts that are from students to this one training. And so like I mentioned, we're adding immigration services, we're adding mental health, we're adding entrepreneurship, and that's only extending our training. Or how can we, like I mentioned, start working on our second training so that we can engage with our partners and our colleagues more. And one of the trainings that I saw one of the challenges that I saw when I came into this training and did this work was we do have campus police here at our institution, and they really wanted to do our training. And so once we heard, we actually said no. We said no to our police at this time because we do have a student panel, which we think is very important and vital for our training. And we didn't want to subject our students to be in front of the campus police and do this. And so one of the things that we did is we started working on a second training specifically for the campus police. And so we sat down with the chief of police of our campus and started working on a training that is specific to them, but we can still highlight voices of the undocumented community without exposing any of our students to that. And so those are some of the challenges that we've seen with our training, but we're really trying to see how can we engage with our colleagues, make sure that we are meeting the demand and making sure we're doing these second trainings. And so we're working on our second training for our colleagues, since they really want to continue to engage into the work. And we're trying to engage to see what can that best look like so that we can continue to do this work.
Thank you so much, Brayan. And I think that's also another great example of like a departmental specific training, right? That also still continues to build like campus support for a department that should really know how to like interact with undocumented folks. Yeah. And so I think I just have a final question for everyone. And if you could keep maybe your answer a little bit more brief, so we also have time for some interaction after this. But people, right, are in different places with their UndocuAlly training, different resources that they're working with. And so I'm just wondering, we'll start with Norma, actually, if you have an advice for campuses, institutions, organizations that's looking to take their UndocuAlly training to the next level, right? Like they're starting off in this place, but how can they kind of like take it up a notch or like, like bring it up a little bit more from where they currently are at?
I would say utilize your students as much as you can. I know that funding varies pertaining to the institution that you're in, but there's, we have the Dream Service Incentive Grant that allows students who qualify for Cal Grant B to intern anywhere for 150 hours and get an additional grant for it. They can be amazing interns at your space that can help you elevate your UndocuAlly training. And they don't have to be from your campus. It can be from your nearby CSU. If you're from a community college, I know a lot of my students that would love to go back to their community college and support their peers there. And find your peers across the campus that can help you. There's a lot of things that I had to learn when I was thinking about doing UndocuAlly training in a module sense. Like, I hit up my IT and they trained my students and I on how to do it. So knowing that there's resources out there, but it's all about the capacity. So it's easier said than done, right? Like I can tell you, yeah, go be innovative, but I understand many of us in this room are wearing multiple hats. It is, there's a lot going on, and many of you are also not only navigating these positions. Like I'm supporting our students as an ally, and I share this in every position that I'm in. Like I am not an undocumented individual doing this educative work. So that's why it's so important for me to have my students be the front facing of everything that we do, because this is for them, by them. And some of you are in those positions and also navigating politics because of your identity. So rest is really important. So as you are thinking of elevating your work, thinking about who are your allies across the campus who can help you navigate politics, who to talk to, who not to talk to, who can open doors for you. When I was a coordinator, I was always told, like, you're just a coordinator, you can't be in these meetings. So that pushed me to get a doctorate. And I'm not telling y'all to go get a doctorate if you don't want to. To me, that's what I felt like I needed. And it's unfortunate that in higher ed, I had to do that to be able to do the work that I truly wanted to do when I didn't have it. So, but know that there's a community out there. All these people here, Immigrants Rising was always amazing at supporting me whenever I needed them, and still do, and they support our students in different ways. So if you're feeling alone out there, just know, like, you can always reach out. I'm sure I can share my contact information. There's people out here who we're not gatekeepers. So anything you need, please let us know. I would love to support you. Because I've been there and I know how it feels to be a team of one or feel alone in this work.
Yeah, thank you, Norma. Brayan, any advice from you about taking folks' trainings to the next level?
Yeah, I would also echo Dr. Norma's words about really leaning onto people and thinking about capacity. I know, like I mentioned, our training is very much inspired by Doctora Elena Macia's work. And one of the things that she mentions is really like, how can we train the trainer and how do we create these UndocuAlly champions? And that's something that we have sustained with our training. And so after every training, we do ask our participants if they want to engage with the work and give back to the training and train themselves or train the trainers, like, and so we invite people to be part of our UndocuAlly champions group and really lead the training with us. And so a lot of the time we're very lucky with the institutional support that we have here at MiraCosta. And so a lot of people come back and tell us they want to work with us to train our faculty and staff and engage in the work that we do. And so I would just say engage with the people. You've all talked about how can we give them these steps. And so we have an UPRISE advisory committee. We invite them to come and do the work that we do. We invite them to, put all of this like placards, and we know that visibility really matters. And so really, how can we create this visible space of support for our students? And so I would say lean on people, lean on to your faculty, your staff, and see how other people can help, because we do know that capacity is not always there. And so leaning on to people and getting that support, I think, is very, very helpful. And like Dr. Norma mentioned, really lean onto your students, hear them and see what they think is the best way to support them. And that's what we're always trying to see how we can incorporate that into our training.
Yeah, thank you both for that, right? We know that UndocuAlly trainings are just the first step. What are we doing after that, and how can we kind of like put the fire in people to afterwards, to keep doing the work beyond attending this one training. So I want to help, or I want to ask everybody to just give like a virtual round of applause. I don't know how you want to do that. Chat emoji on your camera for both Brayan and Norma for sharing all that they do, and even just for the work that they do right in their respective campuses, and for helping move this work in many different ways. And so I'm going to ask people to maybe just hold on to your questions, because I actually want you, instead of asking questions, we're going to actually go into breakout groups right now to just kind of reflect on everything that was mentioned. And Nancy's going to organize that for us, but we have a couple of guiding questions for folks to help kind of guide their discussion. You don't have to use these if you don't want to, but we do want, Nancy put it in the chat, but we do want people to maybe, just think about everything that came up for you in the training. Like, what can you actually take back from this meeting to support your work at your campus or organization? Or if there's a couple of things that really great strategies you also want to share with people in your group, right, around how you use UndocuAlly trainings to increase institutional support, or if there's a challenge you're kind of facing that you resonated with the panel, or that you're facing on your own for now, that it feels like, right, and how are you kind of addressing those? So these are just some guiding questions. We put it in the chat. I think we are getting the breakout rooms ready, and we also will be sharing contact information for our panelists at the end, but I see that, Brayan, thank you for including that in the chat already. So Nancy, are we ready for the breakout? We're gonna do it probably for 10, I think we have like 10 minutes to do it. Thank you, Brayan, for joining. I saw your message.
Madeline, thank you. I'm so sorry that I gotta leave, but thank you.
Oh, no worries. I know you have a lot you're going on. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Keep yourself Okay, you keep yourself muted until unless you're going to speak. But yeah, welcome back, everyone. I hope I think that might have been a little fast. It might have been actually under 10 minutes, but I hope that you got contact information, or we can send folks this contact information after this if you want to further connect with someone but was cut off. I'm wondering, and I'm hoping for a couple of volunteers to just kind of report back what came up for you in your group. I know we gave a lot of information in the beginning, but how did you all kind of spend the time talking to each other? Feel free to unmute, or you can also put it in the chat.
In my group, we talked about when we do UndocuAlly trainings, we always connect them with flex credit. Because a big issue is that mostly we have staff attending these trainings, a way to promote for faculty, which most of our undocumented students tend to spend most of their time around versus staff. It's a way to also make sure that we're giving faculty, the flex credit they need to meet their contracts, but also it's just a fun incentive to have.
That's a good one too, right? Like how can we bring this, like, other than people wanting to do these trainings, right? How else can we incentivize people to take part in it? And things like that, flex credits, which is a community college thing, or is that an all places thing?
With most of community college, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just to clarify. Thank you, Aldo. Yeah, anybody else want to bring up what else came up for them in their group?
One thing that also came up in our group is the importance of UndocuAlly trainings, because the Dream Resource Liaison position tends to be pretty high turnover rate. People are cycling out. It's a very tough position, so who's to blame? And so then you have new DRLs, new Dream Resource Liaisons, trying to restart that political sort of relationship building from zero over and over again, even in campuses that do have history. And so it's good to do the ALLY trainings so that the campus can sort of sustain this undocu effort, even when a DRL is starting from nothing again.
Yeah, Gerson, thank you for bringing that up, right? The allied trainings is a way to institutionalize the knowledge so that it's not just the Dream Resource Center person or the UndocuAlly liaison kind of holding that too. And I don't know if anybody can answer this question. I see something on the chat from a Christian. If anybody, somebody just answered. Yeah, if anybody is at a private university and how they build community to initiate UndocuAlly training, since the UC CSU tend to be more connected. And I think Stephanie, who's actually from Stanford, can connect with you, Christian, more about that. Cool. Okay. Any final thoughts from anybody else that they want to bring up? I hope that you all talked about the allied trainings in your breakout rooms. I won't know, but even if you didn't, I hope you did get to connect with somebody who is doing really great work around undocumented student support, right? And was able to get a little bit more connected or informed about that. And I think there is also a ask in the chat if anybody else is at a private university and to connect with folks there. Gerson, I see you have your hand up.
Sorry, just one last thing that I've been thinking about, a very small but a very important practice that we could have for UndocuAlly trainings. Since outdated information is one of the bigger barriers for undocu peeps, regardless of wherever you are. One small thing that we can do is always date our slide decks, our PowerPoints, and also minimize the number of these presentations that are floating around without context. Because, sure, we love to share these presentations because it helps spread the word, but also at some point they themselves could become dangerous and the information that is no longer relevant, and that people are depending on, right? Sometimes desperately. So please date your workshops and minimize the amount of workshops and copies that you are sending out without context.
Right. Thank you so much, Gerson. I think that's a good reminder, right? Things are always changing. Unfortunately, it can be hard to keep up. So how can we make sure, if not, we're having the most updated information? That could be hard, that we're at least giving a date to when we're doing these presentations and when they were most updated. Okay, I think with that we are, and yeah, I see the point too on online forms and documents and resources, but we're getting closer to the end of our time here today. Thank you so much for staying until the end. I hope you got some really great information, some good connections beyond this. I know it's always hard to do some online things, but we do hope that there was some practice that you learned, some connection you made that's going to help you beyond this meeting. And I see Norma Norma also put her contact in the chat, but we're just going to wrap up with a couple of final things. We know everybody is doing a lot of amazing work across the state, so we're actually hoping to better elevate promising practices here at Immigrants Rising. We have this survey that we're doing to collect a little bit more of those promising practices, to hear how your campus or organization is addressing like common challenges for undocumented students in pursuing higher ed. This survey will kind of ask you a little bit of information for that, and we will be using this to actually create more resources. We're building a whole promising practice library to help replicate and adapt some of these practices across the state, and you could even be featured in one of these panels here to share all of the great wisdom and work that you do in your campus, organization, or region. And then lastly, I do want to give a next plug for our next month's event. This again happens every second Thursday of each month. So it's going to be October 12th. And next month, we're going to be focusing on strengthening pathways through high school and community-based partnerships, because we know that a lot of the information and work also happens beyond students, before students get to college, right? And so we will be talking a little bit more about how to build strong partnerships with these community partners, and to empower and inform students before they even reach our campus. And I think Nancy has been throwing some of those links in the chat there. And so here is also contact information for us. For our panelists today, I want to give another virtual round of applause for both Brayan and Norma for sharing all that they did today, for all of the work that they do. They are also really great folks to connect with. If you want to connect more, this work is possible because we do it as a community. And thank you also to Nancy for doing some of the behind the scenes work. And thank you everybody for being here today. Feel free to always reach out, and we will hopefully see you next month too. Bye.